let's go ahead and get this started. To officially kick this off, this is the Is 10 Weeks Enough to Pass the Bar Exam webinar. The design is to have really a conversation and give you all some information about what you're getting into, some of the challenges of bar prep, the 10-week course, and why it's important to start early, how to start early, and all these things. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and get into the presentation that I have for you all. All right. Is 10 weeks enough to pass the bar? Here's our agenda for today. We're going to talk about what is an early start, when should you start, who should start early, why you want to start early, and how do you do it. And after we talk about all this, what, when, who, why, where, who, etc., I'm also going to give you the solution, right, on how to properly do it and what I think you all should do to take most advantage of the time before your 10-week course starts. Let's kick it off with just the legally fit definition for early start, okay? We have noun and verb. First, the noun. Early start is a structured program or attack plan that prepares one for the bar exam before the traditional 10-week period. So for those that, again, don't know, it's been, custom for decades at this point that somebody studies for 10 weeks, right, after they graduate. So you graduate in May and you study from mid-May until July, and that's your 10 weeks. So that's how the 10 weeks began, just kind of like naturally just flowed after graduation, and that was the time frame that was given to us. The verb of early start is turning a stressful and unconventional study period into something manageable, comfortable, and practical. We're going to talk about this a lot today as to why 10 weeks is really unconventional. Even though for some it's enough to get the job done, it's unconventional in that it's just not a practical amount of time to do all that needs to be done. Again, 10 weeks wasn't some intentional design for how one should comfortably study for the bar exam. It was, okay, we graduated, the bar exam is in July, so we got 10 weeks to study, so let's cram it into that window. And the other reality, just to give you a little bit of the history lesson, is that nationwide, right, decades, ago, the bar exam was just much easier to pass. We didn't have the lower pass rates that we now experience. And so the bar exam has gotten harder. The pass rates have dropped. The grading is harder, and all these things that now, again, really puts more pressure and need to start before your 10 weeks. All right, so that is what an early start is. Next question is, who should start early? And the answer is simply everyone, okay? Starting off with low-performing students, right? So these are for the students who had a struggled experience in law school, lower GPA, or right, just didn't quite figure it out across the board of the law, the skills, essay writing, things like that. The reason why a low-performing student wants to early start is because you want to fix the weaknesses that prevented success on the law school side of things. You want to control the narrative that you can pass, because if you're in that boat, I'm sure, right, either yourself and sometimes faculty, admin, advisors might tell you, you might not be in a position to pass. And so this is how you control the narrative. Remove anxiety and build confidence. And if there's anybody listening right now that's in that boat of being a low-performing student, let me tell you, after doing this now for more than 10 years, I've seen it all. And yes, I've seen the ones that were on academic probation in law school that people said you would never graduate and you would never pass the bar, that went on to pass the bar on their first attempt. So if you're in law school, you're capable and you're able, but again, it's just, what is it that you have to do to get on track for success? And again, an early start is mandatory. It's also for the high-performing student, right? Guarantee you are one and done. Plug any small gaps in the law and skills. And how about just remove the stress associated with bar prep? Why, put yourself in a situation where you're in this pressure cooker of a 10-week period, overwhelmed with all that you have to do when you simply don't have to? The other reality is that just because you're a high performing student, it's not a guarantee that you'll pass. I've seen the Harvard graduate not pass on their first attempt. I've seen the top 10%, the law review student, right, fall victim to the bar exam as well. So this is also, again, like, for a high performing student, do you have to start early? No, but this being the most important exam of your life, this being the exam that's now the the gatekeeper to you starting your profession, the idea is, why wouldn't you, right? To make sure you're done with this as soon as possible. So who must start early? Okay. First, part-time students. If you cannot dedicate 600 to 650 quality hours during the 10-week course, then you must start early. 600 to 650 hours, right, is what a solid amount of time investment looks like to make sure you are ready for all that the bar exam is going to throw at you. Again, 13 different subjects. You have to then be able to access all those subjects quickly, right? You have everything on the bar exam is timed, and none of it feels like enough time, right? You have essays you have to do in an hour for the California bar, 30 minutes for the UBE exam. If you're sitting there trying to like slowly go through the Rolodex of information, right? Like, that's not going to cut it. You have to be able to access all this information quickly and correctly. So 600 and 600 to 650 hours is a good spot to be in, if not more. But when part-time students have work, caretaking, just other life responsibilities that don't allow them to do that in 10 weeks, which in 10 weeks, that looks like 60 to 65-hour weeks of studying, then starting early, again, is a must. First time takers. For all those that are first time takers and saying one and done is the only option, I'm not taking this again, right? Then early start is a must, right? Put yourself in a position where you're not taking those chances of not passing. If you finished law school with a low GPA, weaknesses on any portion of the skill side of this, essay, MBE, or PT, then early starts for you. We'll talk about this more and more, but the idea is that you don't want to start your 10-week prep with any significant weaknesses, because if you do, that's simply going to slow you down and bottleneck your growth throughout bar prep. And then lastly, for those that had poor study habits, some of us just didn't figure out proper study habits during law school. And that's another reason, right, to make this adjustment to bar study habits, because that could be a reason alone you don't get through a successful bar prep, is that you just never got your footing for how to properly study in this intense time window. And then lastly, we have repeat takers. So even though repeat takers know the exam, have some money in the bank already, right? The reality is that sometimes we have very stubborn issues with the exam, and simply 10 weeks is not enough. And if you're in that repeat taker situation, you know that typically what happens is, right, you take the exam and you stop studying, right? You enter your waiting period, and then you find out that you didn't pass. And now you're in this panic scramble period where you're just now getting another 10 weeks instead of taking advantage of more time. And typically, when you're a repeat taker, you do have to work or have other obligations that you can no longer put on hold. So starting early is advantageous to stop running into that cycle of not having enough time. Also, for those that have stepped away from the law, right? We have some repeat takers who are practicing attorneys, or just, had enough of the bar exam for a while and stepped away from it. So if it's been more than 6 months since you've touched the law, another reason to start early. And then lastly, if you need a significant jump from your previous score. So if you have, like, I wasn't close, I need to make a significant jump, again, starting early is what you want to do. All right, let's now talk about how to start early. We got 3 simple things to keep in mind here: structure, expert guidance, and refresh on law and skills. For structure, if you're simply, all right, I'm doing 30 multiple choice questions here and there, I'm doing a couple of essays here and there, I'm doing some Adaptable questions or some UWorld questions here and there, that is not a structured early start that is going to be effective, right? Is it something? Sure, but it's going to be very little. You need a structured plan in a way that you are progressing, identifying weaknesses, and working on them. You need to know how to study, how to soak up lessons from all these things. So we're going to talk about this later, but one of the big messages you're going to hear throughout today is that an ineffective early start is the equivalent of no early start. And when you're just simply passively doing questions, that is not really moving the needle as much as we think it is. The next thing you're looking for is expert guidance. You want to be guided by someone with years of experience in bar preparation, right? Think of it as if you were looking for a tour guide to go through the Amazon jungle. You wouldn't want somebody on day one, day two, and maybe even year one. You want somebody who has gone through this jungle plenty of times, knows the dangers, knows the mistakes, knows the questions of people, all these things, so that way you can have as smooth of an experience as possible. This is something to just bring awareness to, that there are simply a lot of schools that have programs and a lot of companies that have people behind them that just simply don't have the years of experience with this exam. So make sure whatever you're doing, whoever you're following, you're vetting those people to make sure you have expert guidance. And then lastly, refresh on the law and skills. You need both, not one or the other, and you want to touch on them all. Sometimes as an early start, we're just like, oh, doing essays, just working on essay skills. Well, if you're just working on essay skills, but you don't have a foundation of the law, it's hard to do that, right? Like knowing contracts is step one of being able to then write about contracts. So whenever I see programs and systems that don't combine both the law and the skills, that's never to me a sufficient approach to early start. And when we're talking about law and skills, again, the whole idea is to touch on them all, not just some. So touch on all the subjects: contracts, property, torts, remedies, right, etc. Con law, Civ Pro. Touch on all the skills: essay writing, multiple choice, performance tests, and just what study habits look like. This is what's going to give you the best position, right, when you start your 10-week prep, is to have some money in the bank for all of these things. All right, so what really then are your options? These are your traditional options, and I would say more or less your only options for starting early. The first one is do it yourself. This is my least favorite, right? There is no expert guidance. You're figuring it out yourself, and you're probably not using the best materials. So here's the questions to ask yourself. Do you have structure, right, in your own program that you're doing? Do you know what you don't know? A lot of times we don't, especially first-time takers. Do you have proper materials to study from, right? The law school outlines are not going to cut it. We'll learn why. Will you hold yourself accountable, right? That's one of the most important ones. When you're doing it yourself, are you sticking to a plan and holding yourself accountable and sticking with it? Because if otherwise, right, you have a plan with no execution, that's no plan at all. Next is school. So this is something that became popular. Let me go off of it for a second. This is something that became popular over the last, I would say, 3 to 4 years. And the reality is that a lot of schools, right, quickly jump to the idea of let's throw in bar readiness courses in our third year curriculum for our students to better prepare them, right? And that sounds great because that's exactly what's needed. They're seeing that this exam is harder. Every school in the country is seeing it. So yes, let's early start. The reality is, though, is that every school scrambled to create these curriculums, but not every curriculum was created by somebody with bar exam experience. Not every course or class is being taught by somebody with bar exam experience. So from a student's perspective, you might be naive enough to just believe, okay, it's a course, this is going to be great. But behind the scenes, you have to still do, right, a little understanding of, am I really getting what I need to move the needle? So here are some of the questions you want to ask yourself. What is the structure of the course? As I just mentioned before, is it touching on the law, or is it just throwing you into essay writing and skills? Is it taught by somebody that actually has experience? Is it led by a qualified bar instructor? Right? Like, what is their experience with the bar exam? When's the last time, when did you take the bar exam? How long have you been in bar preparation services and things like that? Because sometimes what simply happened was, oh, let's move the remedies professor over into this course. Let's move the contracts professor over into this course. And again, they're coming from practice and maybe taking the bar exam, 20 years ago. Are you reviewing all subjects and are you learning all skills? So again, there are some great school programs out there, some great bar readiness courses offered by schools, but there's also a lot of insufficient ones. So that is for you to assess with the information that I've given you on, are you getting enough from that resource? The last one, and it's my favorite, is via a bar prep company, right? And the reason why it's my favorite, right, whichever bar prep company you end up going with, it's that this is the most experienced source for getting resources on studying for the bar, right? So you're going to get something from somebody that does nothing but prepares people for the bar exam, actual guidance, right? Versus just early access to materials. That is the question, though, that you ask yourself to decide which company you go with. Some bar prep companies, right, albeit better than the other options, are simply just giving you a bunch of things to do, right? Here's your materials, early, good luck. Here's early access. And now, again, that could be helpful, but to me, to really get the most out of early start, you need the guidance and the instruction, right? Instead of just giving you all of the ingredients to make some gumbo, right? Or make a complicated food dish. Like, here's your, your crab, and here's your flour, and here's your, right, all the things, and just good luck go. It's like, no, somebody to show you, here's your step-by-step recipe to make this part simple. And all you have to do is follow the steps. That's what you're looking for as far as guidance. So in that, let's talk about what to avoid in a very tangible way. The first thing you want to avoid, right, are these feelings. If you're feeling burnt out from your early start, if you're feeling like you're wasting time, right, and you know when you're wasting time, it's like, I just don't feel like anything is really building on anything. I don't feel anything transferable. I'm not recalling anything. If you're feeling more stress and confusion, right, these are all signs that either you're not starting at all or the start that you do have is not working. Here are the options that you for sure want to avoid. Passively doing MBE, essay, and PT questions. Again, just simply passively doing something here and there without structure, knowing how to learn from it and grow from it, that's not going to be a good option. Next, reviewing law school outlines and bar prep hand-me-downs, right? So if you're simply just taking all your outlines from law school or some of the materials upperclassmen gave you from bar prep, again, that's not going to cut it. And then lastly, poorly structured bar readiness courses offered by schools. Again, not all of them are poorly structured, but some are, and you have to kind of do the vetting. All right. Activity does not equal progress. Again, that's what we've been talking about. Simply doing is not the equivalent of doing it right. So that is almost the like worst thing you could do. I'd rather a student not start early at all and hopefully be resting, doing what they need to be fresh for their 10 weeks, as opposed to doing all of this work in their early start and it just not actually moving the needle, right? So the worst thing you could do, in my opinion, is start early, but not really make good use of your time. All right. So why is it so important to start early? It's simple. The exam is hard and the consequences of failing are dire, right? That's it. The exam is hard and we do not want to fail. And if we have failed before, we don't want to fail anymore. Okay. Let's talk about first why the exam is hard. So what you see here is a nice little timeline, right, of if you're taking the July bar exam. You can apply this to the February as well, but for now, the July is the next exam, so we'll use that as our template for our schedule. Your bar exam is in July. Your 10-week bar prep will start in May, and then January through April is going to be, your good window for an early start. So let's go now with the assumption that either you didn't do an early start or you did an ineffective early start. So you just wasted that time, right? So that means you're, just jumping into now your 10-week course. This funnel represents your 10-week bar prep course. These jars below represent the 4 core things that you have to fill up. These are your cups that you have to fill before the exam. During your 10-week course, it's chaotic. As you can see in this funnel, there's no empty space really, right? It's packed to the brim. And these are all the things that have to pass through that funnel in that 10 weeks. 13 subjects as far as substantive law, essay skills, PT skills, study habits, and MBE skills. There's no room for error in this 10-week bar prep course. This is why you hear that the bar is half mental, how it's so stressful. It's not that it's necessarily very hard. It's that you're asked to do way more than what you should be asked to do in 10 weeks. And then the other reality is that you're already dealing with such a tight window. Whenever life things happen, that just makes everything that much more chaotic. Your animal, your pet dies or gets sick, or you get sick. You going through relationship problems, you go through a breakup, you go through a death in the family, you're tired, right? Like all these things, when you miss a day, it feels like it's the end of the world. And again, it's because you already are working with less time than what you should have. So that's why there's no room for error. And that's why it's so chaotic in this traditional 10-week prep. What ends up happening is, right, it's a varied outcome on how your jars are filled. Some people are able to fill their jars in a sufficient way to pass the bar exam, but this is why the bar passage rate is so low, is because it's a varied outcome as to what you were able to get done and how you were able to fill these individual cups in that chaotic 10 weeks. So what ends up happening, knowing that your cups aren't all the way filled across the board, you end up going into the exam, fingers crossed, right? With probably some anxiety and some low confidence because you know you're not as ready as you could be or should be. And now again, right? Like this bar exam is crazy, not only in the 10 weeks in the whole process for studying for it, but it's also crazy in how it's graded. The written portion of this is extremely subjective, which is always why it is a fingers crossed. Sometimes you get some bar grading love, right? You might get a higher score than what you deserved. Sometimes you get a lower grade than what you deserve. But these are all the reasons why it's so important to be as prepared as you can to not be subject to those grading variables as well. All right. So we don't want to go in fingers crossed into the bar exam. Let's talk about now what a better bar prep experience looks like, right? One that is now putting you more in a position for success. Same schedule, but now we're going to do a 13-week early start, right? We're going to use Legally Fit's early start, and it's called Bar Taker Advantage to show you how we do it. And this is the 13 early start program and how it works. You're going to start by going through those same things you do in the 10-week program, all of it, but in a no pressure way. We have 13 weeks, which is more than 10. And now our goal is not to go through all of it, but just to go through a significant amount where one, you're getting comfortable with all these things are and look like, you're understanding study habits and how it means and what it looks like to progress through subjects. Right. And the goal is that when you leave Bar Taker Advantage, not that you're, again, did everything and ready for the bar exam, but that all your cups are half filled. Right. So again, 13 weeks to just fill all these cups halfway. So now when you get to your 10-week bar prep, it's pretty obvious you are now starting ahead. You're starting with water already in the cup. And then you start your 10 weeks. And now all of a sudden, this is smoother, right? Because when you start going through contracts, it's like, yes, I got some of this law down already. I know formation. When it's essay skills, I've fixed my weaknesses. I know what I need to do. And now it's just further improving, but I'm no longer in that place of deficit with this skill, right? And that goes for PT skills, MBE skills as well. And then lastly, you would have developed your study habits. You'll realize that you don't have time to outline like you did in law school and the bar exam. So we're done with that, or make flashcards. So we know what systems work for us. We know what materials work for us, and we know how to navigate the day to day. All of this creates a less stress and chaos 10-week program for yourself. And now the reality is that I still ideally want you studying full time in your 10-week bar prep. But in the event that life happens, right, or in the event that you are part time, you're working, et cetera, well, that's what just still makes this now 10-week prep doable because you're not working with the time deficit. So you go through your 10-week prep. And then the beauty of it is that once you finish your 13-week early start and your 10-week prep, now you have your cups filled. You're going into the bar exam with no weaknesses. This is now where I'm saying you're no longer subject to the grading variables, right? Of how was the bar grader feeling that day when they looked at your contracts essay and things like that, right? What kind of nuance did they throw at you on the MBE? You're just ready for whatever version of the test they throw at you. You're walking into the exam confident and ready to go. So this is the experience. And honestly, it should just make sense, right? Like bar exam is hard. It's only 10 weeks, 13 subjects, all these skills. It's too much. Okay. Well, let's back it up a little bit and just prepare ourselves in a less chaotic way. This is why we have a 93% pass rate when students are packaging Bar Taker Advantage in the 10-week prep. And I'll tell you, there's definitely magic behind Legally Fit and how we do everything, but there's also just the obvious in starting early and effectively starting early is going to put you in a better position to pass. All right. So that breaks down why the bar exam is so hard. Let's now talk about the consequences of failing, right? My repeat takers, unfortunately, you've already started to feel the pain of this. And again, the goal is to stop the bleeding. For the first time takers, it's really hard to know what it feels like to not pass and the impact that it has on your life. So I want to paint that picture for you. So let's assume you're again taking the July exam first. You do your 10-week program in May. You then take the exam in July. And now from July all the way to Thanksgiving, all the way to November, you are waiting for your results. Let's say you get the unfortunate news that you did not pass. Well, now it's middle of November and you're in panic mode of scrambling of like, oh my God, I did not expect not to pass. And here we are now. And I got to figure out what I'm going to do. Am I going to do a different program, this, that? What am I going to do differently? And then you jump into admin December, your next 10-week study period. And then you have to wait from February, the end of February, all the way until May to get your results. So total time to Esquire for a second time taker becomes 12 months. That's a whole year of going through that process. A third time taker, 1 year and 7 months, right? For a fourth time taker, et cetera, you could see how this adds up quickly. All while, as you see with those icons to the right, you're losing money spent on more bar prep courses, on the bar exam itself, right? All these things. You're losing time to actually start practicing and making that salary you've been waiting to make. And you're just losing your sanity and your mind in the process. Your confidence is lowering. You're getting beat up by this exam. And that in and of itself becomes a hole to get out of. Now there's a whole extra layer to passing this. Is just now regaining that confidence needed to pass. So these are the consequences of failing and what we want to avoid. So let's make this clear, right? On the bar prep timeline. Again, let's start off with the July bar exam. Exam is in July, 10-week prep. I don't need to convince you of that. Everybody does a 10-week prep, okay? 13-week early start is my recommendation, right? Like that is what I deem to be a good amount of time to early start. Could you do 14 weeks, 15 weeks? Sure, but 13 weeks is a good number that I recommend for most people. When is it mandatory to do this 13-week early start? Again, you cannot commit to the 600 to 650 hours during 10 weeks. You have weaknesses that you've identified in law school, right? With subjects. I got a C in contracts. I got a D in property. I got a C in con law, etc. Bar skills. I always struggled with multiple choice. I always struggled with essays. These are things and reasons to do a 13-week early start to fix these gaps. And the last one is if passing is a must. If you're in that position again, where like, I absolutely need to pass this exam, an early start is just mandatory in my opinion. And then it's optional if you just simply want to pass with less stress and chaos. Again, this is for the student that maybe doesn't have any weaknesses, is a high-performing student in law school, et cetera. But you just simply want to make sure you pass and you just don't want the stress. I don't want to cram this all into 10 weeks. Why not start earlier, make this smoother and more successful? Now, some students even do an additional early start on top of the 13 weeks. This is mandatory if you're in a position where you're working, you're caretaking, you have outside of school responsibilities that will not allow you to complete 650 hours, even in the 23 weeks. 23 weeks is 10 weeks of prep and 13 weeks of early start. If that's still not enough time to complete your 650 hours, you got to move as far back as you need to complete that. Optional, you have the extra time and you want to use it. You want to increase your chances of passing that much more. Again, I think the only people that really need to consider that additional early start beyond 13 weeks is, again, you have circumstances that just really don't allow you to put in that time. And when you're in that position, everybody, those that are part-time students for whatever reasons, that alone sometimes is the reason why you're not passing. It's not the law. It's not this. Like, it's just simply not enough time being put into something that requires so much of your attention. For the July bar exam, everybody, it's going to be the same. And we just changed the month so you can see it. So December is your 10-week prep. August to December is your 13-week early start. And May to August is your additional early start. All right, let's talk now about Legally Fit's Bar Taker Advantage and why you want this. Bar prep works best when it isn't your first exposure to the law or skills. The objectives and goals of this program is to significantly increase your chances of passing, reduce anxiety, and turn up the confidence, because who wants to be sitting in nervousness and anxious energy? All right. And then lastly, lighten the load and take the pressure off of your 10-week study period. Here's the structure of the course so you can get a crystal clear understanding of what it entails. Some of us are thinking, how can I fit this in, right? I'm already working. I already have classes and all these things. I got you. Don't worry. The early start schedule is 13 weeks long, and it's very simple, very easy to follow, in that every week has a focus on one subject and one skill, right? There's 13 subjects, 13 weeks, right? One subject a week, one skill. Here's how it looks in a given week. In a given week, you are going to have a subject diagnostic, a subject lecture, your weekly skills workshop, and then optional practice on the weekend. So the subject diagnostic is going to take about 30 minutes, and that's your ability to really see, where am I at with this class? How do I stack up to other people coming into this? And am I at a satisfactory place at the beginning? This gives you the awareness of like, ooh, I'm struggling in contracts. I got a very low score on this diagnostic. That tells me I need to put a little extra work here. Oh, crim law, I remembered more than I thought I did. This subject I'm not as bad in. So this is good, again, for you to have awareness, right? And then maybe be able to do something about it. Next is your subject lecture. And that's where we're going to do the heavy lifting and providing you with the videos and materials to get a proper foundation in that subject. So watch this 2-hour video where it's only going to cover heavily tested topics and establish that foundation, right? And I have it here as do that on Tuesday, but as long as you find 2 hours between Tuesday and Friday, right, you're good and prepared for then your weekly workshop. If you're in the live version of the program, we have a live Zoom workshop on Fridays from 2 to 4 Pacific Standard Time, right, which is the same time as what we're doing right now. So if you can make this webinar, you'll be able to be a part of our live workshops. In these live weekly skill workshops, this is where we're doing exercises and now doing diagnostics and skill exercises to see where you're at with essay writing, multiple choice PT, and in the nitty gritty. Why are you struggling with multiple choice? Is it time management? Is it reading comprehension? Is it your system for how you go through the questions? Why are you struggling with essays? Is it your outlining phase? Is it your ability to analyze the facts? Do you know what judgment calls are and how to make them? The beauty of this course is that each week, right, and this is where the guidance comes in, I will be focusing on a new skill each week and giving you the exercises to see where you're at with that skill, and also the advice on how to improve that skill if it is a weakness. And then lastly, you got optional practice on the weekend. For those that have more time available, I'll give you the resources and the instruction on how to take that to the next level. So with this Bar Taker Advantage course, I just need you to give me 5 hours a week. And that's how you're going to get that 93% pass rate, pairing it with your 10-week course, just 5 hours. And the more you can give me, the better, right? The more you can give me on the weekend of Okay, I put in a few extra practice essays, a few extra multiple choice questions, some more hypos, etc. It just makes it that much better. All right, so that's our schedule. Inside Bartaker Advantage, I'm going to give you guys now an overview here and then inside the portal view of what you're getting with this program. So bar ready materials, structure and tracking, and live support. That's the summary of it. Let's break it down. You're going to get engaging lectures, outlines and charts, and practice hypos. One thing I can't replicate in this, short webinar is how amazing our lectures are. But go on Google, read our reviews, and just hear about how when students come to Legally Fit, the law just makes sense, right? And in large part, it's accomplished by the lectures with the outlines and charts to accompany it. Next is structure and tracking. And this is how we get better, right? You need the data and you need to improve. So we have a weekly plan. We have a progress bar for you, accountability to make sure you're staying on track, and diagnostics to, again, help make these assessments of where you're weak and where you're strong. And then lastly is live support. This is not a program at all for the Bartaker Advantage or our bar prep, where you're simply giving your materials a pat on the back and a message of good luck. We're in this with you, and we're here to answer your questions and support you as you go through and as you're trying to figure things out. Because just like in law school, part of this is like you have to be within a box of how you approach this, but you have to make slight personal adjustments for your schedule or for your learning style. And that's where we're here to guide you to make sure you're not misstepping and doing things that you shouldn't. That live support looks like those live skill workshops, right? The community support that we build of our students being able to connect, and also office hours where we have that weekly. You guys know what that looks like. Just like law school, your professor had office hours. We'll have office hours for you to come in if you have questions on the law, on the skills, how you need to improve, things like that. All right, so let's go ahead and do a quick demo. I'm going to show you inside the portal of once you sign up, what it looks like and how you navigate any given week inside of Bartaker Advantage. All right. So right now it's currently just on the schedule. So again, you have a very clear schedule of what we're doing every week, what subject we're working on. So this is simply your schedule, right? Always got to be knowing what's going on. Then let's go ahead and close this. This is like your dashboard, your ability to navigate the Bartaker Advantage course. If I close all of these, you'll see that you got contracts, all your materials, then property starts, then torts, remedies. Again, every subject that you need to know. Let's start off with contracts. This is your diagnostic, right? This is what it looks like. Welcome to your contracts diagnostic quiz. Time quiz, you have 15 minutes to go through this quiz. All right. This is then going to tell us and tell you what is your starting point. These are not questions on like, can you apply the law? Do you remember the rules? This diagnostic is carefully created just to test the foundations of contracts, of like your starting point of do you know what this subject is about and some of the core principles, which makes it a really good diagnostic. All right. So that's your diagnostic. After you finish that, again, you have your videos and materials, right? So you'll click on your videos. Yep. Let's leave page. And you got videos to watch. There's me teaching the law, breaking it down for you. Next, you got your blueprint. All right. This is your outline that you'll be able to have up as you're going through the videos and also just study independently from to see your rules, learn the law, and also more than just the law, right? Let's see if I could find one for you. Things like test tips, things to look out for, right? Notes. Let's find a test tip. There's also examples built into these as well. But you'll find, here we go, test tip. This doctrine is typically triggered by a general contractor and a subcontractor scenario. So we're filling this up with just those pro tips and those helpful things to know outside of just the rule, but what to expect when you're seeing it in action. After the blueprints, we got charts for all of our visual learners, right? So these have diagrams in there, how to diagram, how to go through it. We have, like, again, visual charts for breaking down in a flowchart manner what certain topics are. So this is a good one for the Battle of the Forms, gives you a step by step on how to go through it. And I imagine, for those that haven't seen 2207 in a while, this might be a little overwhelming at first glance. But when you go through this and build it out and see how these steps just walk you through the analysis, it turns off the thinking. I don't have to think through this. I just have my steps. Step number 1, does the UCC apply? If yes, go here. Step 2, next question. If yes, go here. And you just walk through it. This takes the hard work out of bar prep, and really you just got to execute and remember these things. So those are your charts. And then you have your hypo questions. We're going to talk about where you could do the hypos on the platform. But as you're going through the lecture videos, I often go through hypos. And so here's just a place to like see all the hypos that I'm talking about. So you don't have to just listen to me read them out loud. You can also follow along by reading the hypos yourself. All right. And then essay lookup is a way just to look up bar exam questions that test the topic that you're looking for. Oh, I want to do a question on formation. Well, here's some years that you can go and pull an exam that test on those things. So a great resource to do practice questions for weak topics. All right. Then you have your live workshop every Friday. As we talked about, we'll have our live workshops. If you're doing the recorded version of Bar Taker Advantage, which we'll talk about, you can watch the recording at any time. But if you're doing the live program, it'll be on Fridays at 2:00 Pacific Standard. And then lastly, here's your extra practice. This is that extra mile to really move the needle more. First thing you're going to have are the legally fit hypos. I've researched 3,000 multiple choice questions, essays for the bar exam dating back to 2002 to extract the patterns and create very simple and amazing questions that make the law more relatable and have great explanations that explain why the right answer is right and how to organize it. So, the good thing that we do with this too is just make it a little bit fun, and there's going to be something for everybody. If you're a basketball fan, you know who Chris Paul is, right? We're going to use modern pop culture to help make these things relatable. That's then going to prepare you for the more traditional questions. And then after that, after all these hypos you got, right, you select your hypos, you go through them, you get your scores and see where you're weak. That's an example of what the answer choices will look like. This is a very simple question. So I promise you, when you get to more complex questions, it's going to be much longer in that feedback. And then you have practice essays, right? Practice essays, you have issue checklists and sample answers. And the idea, again, is that you're going to have more than enough work. The only thing that you might want to additionally include into this suite of materials is if you have an Adaptabar or UWorld account to add in those as well. But you honestly do not need to with all that we're giving you. You'll be able to do those when you're in your 10-week prep. The last thing is we have a essay workshop and an MBE workshop, which is just like me breaking things down. That's like the nitty gritty of me going through an essay, me going through multiple choice questions. And those are very valuable to pick up lessons there as well. So as you can see, these are all the things we use to achieve these results and make this magic. And this is what you'll be able to do on a weekly basis. Again, it's designed for you to give me at least 5 hours a week with watching the videos and showing up to lecture and doing your diagnostic. And then you have a plethora of additional practice to take it further. All right, let me go back to the deck. All right, so done with our demo. Here are our course guarantees. If you go through Bar Taker Advantage, I promise you are going to master bar law and rules. Quick reminder, you need to adjust to bar law and rules. It's different than law school bar and rules, right? You all know, you've been in law school, you could be in contracts and one of your peers is taking contracts simultaneously with a different professor at the same school. Well, why do they have different rules? And why do they talk about this area of law that we didn't talk about, right? And all those things. Law school professors have such creative freedom to decide what they want to talk about and how it needs to be talked about that you're not always in a position of readiness for the bar version of that subject. Some professors teach, more so for practice than they do for the bar exam. And practice is different than the bar exam. So all that to say, bar rules are different than law school rules, different than real life rules. And so you want to start making that transition now. Next, improve bar skills, essay, MBE, and PT. So with this one, it's pretty similar. What you needed to do for success on law school final exams, it changed for every professor. Some professors, you had 3 essays to do, or you had 1 essay for 3 hours, right? Well, on the bar exam, it's going to be the same. California, you have 1 hour essays and you have to do multiple ones back to back. For the UBE, you have 30-minute essays every time and you have to do them back to back. That's a whole new skill set of what that requires. And so it's learning that and getting ready for that because that part is predictable. MBE, you have to do 200 multiple choice questions in 6 hours. That alone can tell you why there's a new skill set involved with just the endurance and the ability to jump in and out of subjects. That's the other thing. You're used to doing one subject at a time. This is contracts, final exam. I'm doing contracts multiple choice. You now have 200 questions that are alternating subjects, different skill. And the next, performance test. Something that you've done, right, at your job, something that you've done maybe in your first year, but do you have the refined skill for completing lawyer tasks in an hour-and-a-half time frame? Bar study techniques, we talked about this as well. How you study for the bar exam is different than how you study in law school. Law school is all about going to class, reading the cases, extracting the rules, making your outline, making flashcards. Like, you don't have time for any of that in bar prep. The best way to analogize it for you is that 10-week bar prep is a lot like finals period that you have for 2 weeks. So imagine the intensity of finals period and what you have the time to do in that 2 weeks. Imagine that for 10. And so with that, we have to learn how to navigate that for 10 weeks and what are the things that move the needle and that we have time to do. And then lastly, diagnose and develop your weaknesses. Again, talked about it, just can't stress the importance of it enough. Your goal is to go into 10 weeks with no significant weaknesses, and everybody's weaknesses are different. Figure out yours and start working on them. Ultimate goal, transition from law school rules, skills, and study habits to what the bar requires. Enter your 10-week bar prep course with no weaknesses that will slow you down, but rather a head start that allows you to complete this smoothly and successfully. All right, as we start to wrap up, let's talk about what your options are for those interested in Legally Fit's Early Start with our Bartaker Advantage course. We have our live program and our on-demand version of the program. You see the price difference is $1,500 versus $3,000. Here are all the differences between the two. First off, with BTA Live, you get the live workshops. And honestly, this is the magic of Legally Fit. Most bar prep companies do not give you the option to go to a live workshop. They simply give you materials. It's all self-regulated and you do it yourself. These live workshops are where we answer questions, go through exercises, give immediate feedback for you to really improve. Next, weekly office hours. You know what office hours are. We offer them. Again, not something that you typically get in the bar prep space, to have an outlet for the questions that you will have during your studying. And next, accountability and additional support. The BTA Live is just adding in that much more of accountability and support, and really through the live workshops and the office hours. And there's definitely more as well, but we're going to keep you accountable. We're going to have expectations for class and hold you to that. And that's a big reason why people want this, right? Because otherwise you would be considering just doing it yourself. Right. So we find that nice way of not badgering you. This is not law school. We're not here to make anybody feel bad or be bad. Right. But we're here to keep you accountable for, like, hey, this is what you signed up for. These are the steps you want to take. And if we're not following those steps, reach out, talk to us. Is something going on? How can we help you get back on track? And then sometimes it's just simply you're not doing the work, and we'll give you that little small kick in the butt too in that situation of, like, hey, we need you to step it up. Next, duration of access to materials. For BTA Live, you get 7 months. Right? We only offer BTA Live from January to July. And so if you sign up for this, you'll get access to these materials until the exam. The on-demand version of this program, you can sign up for that at any time. So if you're doing the February exam, or you want BTA before the live program starts, you want to do it at a different time frame, this is then self-regulated, self-paced, and you have access to everything for 4 months from your date of purchase. Right. So for BTA Live, you get a longer time period, 7 months, and all the way up into the exam. Here are the things that you also get with BTA, and you get regardless of which program you decide on. You get our complete course materials, again, that I walked you through. Also, both programs pairs with any bar prep course. So if you're interested in Themis, Barbary, or Legally Fit, right? Bartaker Advantage is going to pair you and prepare you for any 10-week course that you do. And for those that are considering Legally Fit for their 10-week bar prep course as well, but you're still on the fence or you're undecided still on what bar prep to choose, this is the perfect way to test drive Legally Fit. You might have heard on how great we are, something sparked your interest. Well, this is an easy way to be non-committal to see, do I want to do that for 10 weeks while still getting a ton of value in this early start period? And this is where we have our 93% pass rate, where people are pairing Bartaker Advantage with our 10-week course. You have a little note there on who it's best for each program. And the summary is, yeah, students who want structure, accountability, and real-time feedback, they lean into BTA Live. And for those that are independent learners, they can't make, any of the workshops. They want flexibility. They just want to study on their own. Then On Demand is the better option for you. And by spending, this past hour or so with me, we're offering you all a limited time offer today for attending this webinar where you can get $500 off either option, the on-demand or the live program. The price has changed on the website. Monique is going to put the link in the chat right now, and you could sign up for $500 off. This will change back to normal pricing after Sunday. And if you're still not ready to pull the trigger after all this information, and I'll stick around even here for an additional 20 minutes, 30 minutes or so to answer any questions. But if you're still not sure, you can also do a free 2-week trial of Bartaker Advantage. Just email Monique, and her email address is listed there. Just email her saying interested, and she'll send you what you need to sign up for the free 2-week trial, which means for 2 weeks, you'll get access to all the materials and access to the live workshops. First subjects are contracts, and I believe the second one is property. So you'll be able to attend everything and actually see it through. But if you want to sign up now, you can take advantage of the $500 off because that will expire by Sunday. All right. Thank you guys for sticking through. I hope this was informational. If nothing else, I hope you have information now to get out of anxiety and out of what do I do and when do I do it, and start stepping into action, right? Maybe you're going to do it yourself. Maybe you're going to go with your school's offered, bar readiness course, or maybe you're going to do Bartaker Advantage. But just don't fall into that window and that group of students who show up to their 10-week prep just, again, with confusion and like, okay, here we go, and just having a chaotic experience that may not turn out to be successful. I'm going to open it up to questions now. You guys can use the Q&A feature to ask anything. And if anybody wants to speak, I can also give you access to speaking, so that way you can, verbally articulate your question as well. But for all those that got what they needed, thank you guys for taking some time out of your Friday to come, and good luck with your bar prep studies.